Welcome back, everyone, to Inside the Factory. I'm joined again by Harlan and Sasha. Again, I'm Aaron. We're going to kick off this session with some feedback that we've been gathering from our first two sessions. The very first question comes from Thomas Voigt, who asks on Twitter, are there others than Harlan and Sasha on the Revit team? Sasha, what do you have to say to that?
Well, to prove that there's more than just the two of us, today we've actually invited another guest to join us. Today we are joined by Mohit Mehta, who is one of our engineering managers, and therefore we have three people working on this product. But actually, all joking aside, we actually do have quite a large team working on the product, and hopefully you get to see more of them in future episodes. But we're really excited to have Mohit with us today. Mohit, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Mohit, and I'm the engineering manager, as Sasha pointed out, for Revit Cloud Worksharing team. And I oversee the work for both the engineering and the software development side, and also the delivery and management side of our cloud services. I have been with Autodesk 15 years, and out of that, 10 years have been spent with Revit Cloud Worksharing, on which I have worn multiple hats, right, from being a developer to a product owner, Scrum Master, and now an engineering manager. So really excited to be here today answering all questions.
Thanks, Mohit. The next question in our mailbag comes from Wayne Patrick Dalton, who asks, thanks for posting and putting yourself and ITF out here in such a visible way. That can't be easy. The internet's a scary place. But can you explain, please, how the Ideas Forum works and appears not to work? I believe only 1.5% of 8,388 ideas have been implemented. Harlan, you want to take that softball?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Aaron. Well, for this question in particular, last week's episode, or episode 2, we talked about this quite a bit, about how does the Idea Platform work? What do we do there? How do we respond? How do we read those? How do we compare those to other ideas? So I'd highly recommend folks to check out that episode if you haven't looked at it. But the point he makes is well taken as well, that only that percentage of 8,000. There's a lot of ideas, and we can do a lot better job of cleaning up the site and making sure that we're responding as well, and making sure that we're marking things with the correct status. And on that note, we actually have an open position. We just opened recently for a Revit Community Engagement Manager. And this person's job would be to help us manage that site as well as our other community engagement, so we can do a better job overall and just have a better experience for everybody, so that that we're actually listening in there. So that's my little pitch for people to come and apply, come in and be part of the Revit team and help us make the product better.
Thanks, Harlan. And I think Mohit gave us a little bit of a preview of what today's session is going to talk about. We're going to focus on Revit and the cloud. So if you want to think about the Revit Cloud Worksharing piece of BIM 360 design. To get that started, Sasha, what does Autodesk do with my data?
Yeah, this was kind of a concern, or is a concern, that a lot of our customers raise and saying, I'm putting my data in the cloud. Can you guys use my data? Can we do things like, who owns the data? And at the end of the day, if it is in your project environment, you own your data. Autodesk is not taking a look at it. We're not doing anything. The data belongs to you. So anytime, in fact, we have really strict protocols about what people can actually even access production data in any way, shape, or form. There are background checks and things like that. So this is not something that, I can't go in and look at your data. You would have to literally just go into your project and add me and give me permissions to look at it. So I think that's really important. Your data is yours, and all of this is covered by our terms of use. So please take a look at those. This kind of applies across all Autodesk products and certainly applies to Revit Cloud Worksharing.
Okay, as a follow-up then, how can I learn more about security and privacy protocols with Autodesk?
Yeah, so obviously that's the next question is like, after what do you do with my data, where can I learn more? Is it secure? So we actually have put together an entire page to answer all of these questions. It's called the Trust Center. You can find it at trust.autodesk.com. And this is just a great place to learn about security, find out about standard compliances. For example, something like a SOC 2 certification, which is a security protocol certification that Revit Cloud Worksharing has actually achieved. You can find that on there, and it shows you which products are certified for that and which are not. So kind of we've post all that kind of information on there. If you do need more details, we do have a request for information or RFI process that you could go to if you have more detailed information, if you want more detailed information before you make a purchase.
Yeah, when I was working with customers, that would come up from time to time, and we would just have the sales reps know how to handle that. So talk to your Autodesk sales team or your channel partner team, and they can help direct you there. Mohit, can you host data outside the US?
Yes, absolutely you can. In fact, starting Revit 2021, we have launched a new region in Europe. So now when you start a new project with BIM 360 Design, you have a choice whether you want to host it in the US data center or our new Europe data center.
Yeah, it was quite a big question. COVID's kind of thrown a wrench into everything, but that really answered maybe the largest request from our customers in Europe starting this year. Sasha, how about uptime? What's the uptime for our cloud services?
That's always a tough question because we get that asked that a lot. So the best place you can actually find out about incidents and things like that is on health.autodesk.com, where we post kind of incident updates, and you can actually find out downtimes. Unfortunately, we don't actually share one number that applies to all of our customers because the experience for our different customers is different. So we can't share one solid number, but you can get a pretty decent approximation by looking at health.autodesk.com and kind of combining all those incident times. The good news is that even those incidents that you see on there, a lot of the time are actually not full-blown outages, which has been something that we've been working on really, really hard for the last few years. Mohit can attest to this. So a lot of the time, this incidents will only impact a small percentage of our customers. The more we can do, to make sure that happens, the better. We have, knock on wood, not had a serious outage in a while, but we're always looking to make that better.
Tell me how you prioritize uptime.
We've been really fortunate with the Revit Cloud Worksharing team that we've been given the space because we realize it's so important to have uptime for our customers. We've been giving the space and time to actually invest in resiliency and get those projects on the roadmap that really have changed the stability of Revit Cloud Worksharing in the future. It's really important to point out that even though we've been doing this for 3 years, we've made huge leaps and bounds and huge investments. Resiliency is a process, not a destination. You will never be fully resilient because back-end services change. We get more users, all those things. So our teams are constantly investing in resiliency. And to make that kind of consistent across the board, at Autodesk, we actually have a process or certification that's called Built with Forge. And that basically is a set of requirements that all cloud service teams have to achieve in order to meet standards that we at Autodesk have set for cloud services. So this includes things like the expectations for testing, how you actually make sure that you're able to support the customers you have. It ensures that we have consistent practices across all of Autodesk, and that we try to standardize our technology stacks across Autodesk. And certainly the really, really big important piece of it, and I talked a little bit about incidents earlier, when we have an incident, there is a standard process which we must follow to have a retrospective of what caused the incident, how do we react to the incident, and what are the things that we can fix to prevent it from ever happening again. And that list of things that we can change to prevent the incident from happening again becomes the number one priority for our cloud service teams. So we really, really take this seriously. We basically drop the work that we're doing to say, look, we have to fix this so that our customers don't experience the similar kind of incident.
Also, if I may add a little bit to what Sasha said, we work on uptime and resiliency fixes in one of two ways. One is what Sasha mentioned. As part of each incident, we do a rigorous postmortem where we try to understand what happened and why it happened. And it involves not just the Revit Cloud Worksharing service, but also other services and even our cloud service providers, if that's where the problem lies. And we try to, as Sasha said, prioritize that work and fix it as we go. But in addition to that, we also do resiliency in a very proactive fashion. So every week we do service reviews, which is essentially looking at the tape and the charts for that whole week on seeing how various components are doing and is everything acting healthy? Is there something that we need to go deep dive into? So our engineering teams actually conduct those on a weekly basis and make sure that if there's something that even seems remotely problematic, that we proactively look at that stuff so it does not ever translate into an incident and does not ever get into your way of using the service.
We've talked a lot about resiliency. Mohit, do you think about performance with Revit Cloud Worksharing?
Yes, we think about performance all the time. So our top priority is resiliency. And if I could put something as a number 2 on that list, that would be performance. We look at each and every opportunity to improve performance and thereby improving our user experience in the process. We look at the number of calls that we're making from the client to our web services. And if we could make a reduction in the number of calls there, the lesser the number of calls, the better the performance would be, because the lesser the round trips would be between your machine and the cloud. We also look at the amount of data that's transmitted back and forth on those calls, and we try to reduce that as well. Not only are we trying to reduce the data, we also try to cache the data as closer to the user as possible. So we have personal accelerator that's running on each user's machine to prefetch the data and make sure that the data your Revit is going to require is already there on your machine. If not, we also have edge locations, which we use CloudFront edge caching for. And this is a technology that's provided by Amazon, which is our cloud service provider. The way that works is based on where the call is originating from. It tries to hit the closest cloud edge location or the cloud cache location where the data might actually be there for you. So you don't have to, let's say, go all the way to our Virginia data center for the question to be answered. It could be answered much closer to you based on where you are geographically.
Thanks, it's good info. So then Mohit, sometimes the health dashboard doesn't seem to be updated even though customers are seeing issues. Why would that be?
So the first thing that you need to know about the health dashboard is that it is manually updated, and that is by design. There are chances that by the time we get to a particular incident and we try to reproduce it on our end, that it could have actually self-healed because of all the resiliency patterns and things that we have done on an engineering backend side to make sure that things are resilient and fail-proof. But at the same time, we fully acknowledge that we could do better with updating our dashboards. And we are in the process of trying out new technologies that are going to make the process a little bit more seamless, both for us on the side where we are setting up these uptimes and statuses, but also at the same time, make it a little bit more easier for our customers to consume that information.
So you said that some things self-heal, but otherwise, why not automate things?
We are definitely looking at automating that in the way of making sure that the tools are supportive of it. But at the same time, we don't want to go full automation because the checks that we have in our system are calibrated towards early warning. So it's quite feasible that we have our incident on a backend system that does not necessarily translate into user visible failure because of all the patterns of resiliency that we put in the middle to make sure things are seamless for our customers. So one example may be one of our downstream dependencies that we get some authentication authorization information from is flaking out and is not accessible in a given moment. But we also have that information cached into our caching layers, so we can use the caches instead of going to our downstream dependencies. So on our backend, our health checks would show us that there's something going on, but at the same time, the users are protected from that incident, and therefore we don't want to update the dashboard automatically just to alarm everybody, which won't actually be true in this case. So we want to make sure that we're not giving false alarms to our customers. And also, as I was pointing out earlier, some failures are transient in nature and things do self-heal, and also that we don't have a single point of failure. So it's quite possible that one of our computers that's running our services in the cloud flakes out, but we do have enough redundancy in there that the next call you try or the system would automatically retry for you, goes to a different computer, and that works for you. So that's what I mean by transient failures that you don't necessarily want to update your dashboards for. And also, sometimes it's really, really hard for us to know that an incident is ongoing. So this incident that we had in July, I believe, where we had local caches that were corrupted as a result of a change that we pushed out. We, on our side, on Autodesk, we were not able to reproduce that on our computer. So we had to work with our customers that could provide us journals that we had to then triage and figure out what the problem was and what was going on. From our backend system, all the traffic that was making to cloud worksharing was actually successful. So we couldn't really say with surety that there's something that's troubling our customers. But again, with all the reports that we got from the field, we were able to update the health dashboards based on the data that our customers were providing. So sometimes it is quite possible that we may not have all answers and all information to know that there's an incident that's going on.
So between what you're telling me and what Sasha just said, and back to our conversation last week, this heavy focus on resiliency. One of the things as a former user and as a consultant that I would speak about or be concerned about with Revit users was that I'm trusting my data to be hosted, by Autodesk, and that's a huge a customer might fail to see at first glance is that's a huge risk for us, right? So all of this work. We take this very seriously, right? This idea of hosting customers' data worldwide, and there is a lot of work behind the scenes to make it that much easier for the end user. It's kind of been a win-win, but we had some growing pains along the way, and it's not always perfect. So appreciate you sharing some of those details.
Yeah, I think we absolutely realize that we become part of the critical path, and in doing that, it's really important that we're available and you can get your work done. So there is nothing more worthwhile for us to do than to make sure that we're not in any way blocking your work.
I think in the early days, Kyle said, so we're focused on stability, and then there was something about features, beyond that. But
I complain about this to Mohit all the time. Like in the 3 years that I've been PM for Revit Cloud Worksharing, I think I've gotten to do 2 features. As a PM, I want to do features, but I realize that it is so super important for us to make sure that resiliency is there and kind of at a level that our customers expect.
So Sasha, why can't we just promise 99.9% uptime?
Well, you kind of heard about it a little bit earlier, so I think we've covered some of that. We absolutely aspire to get to that kind of level of service availability, right? That's what the experience that we want our customers to have. And the ways that we actually go about that, given the uncertain nature of cloud services, is a lot of the time we build out features that try to protect our customers from unexpected events that may happen in the cloud. So say the sign-in service at Autodesk goes down for whatever reason. What we do is we actually cache your information as you're working, so that way you're able to keep working even though that service has gone down. So a lot of the time that kind of having things like caches like that or other technologies really enables us to protect our customers from unexpected events, which means that we actually have much higher uptimes in that process. So the more functionality that we can build to do that, to protect from unexpected conditions, the closer we get to that aspirational goal.
So I have a question that's like a legacy question here, Sasha, around what happened to Communicator that comes in from Twitter, from Steve Germano.
So sure, thanks for asking, Aaron. So Communicator was a data technology that was available as part of BIM 360 team. Unfortunately, we felt after reviewing it, we decided that it was not a technology we wanted to keep around for the long term because of kind of its dated nature and the fact that it was just not sustainable and didn't actually meet resiliency expectations for our customers. So what we've done is, in the meantime, in Revit 2020.1, we actually introduced the activity indicator that lets our customers know when somebody is syncing. This was the most important functionality that our customers identified when we talked to them for replacing Communicator. And so we reintroduced that in 2020.1 to let you know when somebody is syncing. It appears at the bottom of your Revit screen. And that allows the prevention of sync conflicts or 2 people syncing at the same time. The reason that's important, going back to our earlier conversation around performance, syncing at the same time can actually mean that you significantly decrease the performance for both people syncing. So if you're thinking about it, try to avoid syncing at the same time. We do have the activity indicator to help you do that. It can greatly improve your sync performance. We do also get the question, like, are you planning to replace the rest of Communicator? So right now we're not, but we are thinking about how we can better integrate with chat clients that you may already have at your firm. And that's kind of the capability that we want to support, because we feel that other companies are actually much better at communications than we are. That's not our competency. And so integrations into existing communication methods are probably the best way for us to go.
Yeah, and I would add to that in Revit 2021.1, we introduced shared 3D views. You could push out views to effectively the Autodesk viewer. So it introduces another method for communication around markups and comments. And the Revit Issues BIM 360 plugin has gone to a public beta. So folks can jump into that now and start playing around with BIM 360 issues directly inside of Revit. So we're building the communication pipeline over time from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, exactly. And the goal for us is to better integrate the desktop experience and the cloud experience, because sometimes it can feel a little bit separated. The goal is for us to make all of those available to you, no matter which tool you happen to be in. That is kind of definitely our longer term direction that we want to go with cloud services.
So thinking about longer term, so Harlan, Robin Duerlo, this is our last mailbag item, submitted something through the Revit feedback at autodesk.com email alias. Thank you for doing that. A detailed question on the cloud. So what is the future going to look like? Will we all be working in the cloud? And will parts of the design process be in the cloud? And how will that fit into the license thing we have right now? Recognize that not all of us can move to the cloud.
Yeah, so the future of the cloud and the future of Revit is definitely not a simple, like, short bullet pointed answer that I can just give off at the end here. But I think what it's really going to be about is doing things in the cloud when it makes sense, and doing things on the desktop with your local hardware when it makes sense. A lot of the things that you see us investing in right now for the cloud are around collaboration, around data, and about being able to access your designs wherever you may be. Things like shared views or cloud work sharing, or even rendering as a service, which I think is worth talking about too. Those things are all about making sure that we're doing the operations in a place where it makes the most sense to do those. So rendering as a service is a great example of something that actually a computational intensive task that makes sense to offload, because what we're sending up to the cloud is actually lightweight, and what we're sending back is inherently an image, which is also lightweight. But when you're sending other types of analysis, it can be really costly to actually move the data between the desktop and the cloud and back again. So it makes sense to look at this from a perspective of where does it make the most sense to run the data, to actually access the data and use it. When your data is all in the cloud, it might make more sense to do operations in the cloud on that data versus whether it's on the desktop or not. So primarily, we're not looking at this as like everything's going to be up in the cloud and that's where it's all going to be. It's going to be more about what the workflow is, what you're trying to achieve, and where does it make the most sense in order to actually have that experience.
Yeah. But I think we are absolutely seeing kind of more and more, especially collaborative experiences happening through the cloud, right? COVID-19 pushed this to a whole new level of collaboration with everybody working at home. It's been great to see our tools adopted to address that problem, but that is exactly the kind of experience that cloud allows us to do that wasn't possible on the desktop. So it's a lot easier to connect people and allow them to access data if it's in the cloud. And I think that's why you see progressively a lot of things beginning to move to the cloud if they haven't already moved there, because it allows us to build such much better experiences than we were able to do before.
Great, that's a wrap. Thank you, Mohit, Sasha, Harlan, for joining us today, sharing your insights and expertise. And thank you all for listening in, watching us on this Inside the Factory session. Please send your feedback to revitfeedback@autodesk.com or respond to YouTube, or we'll be on Twitter. Look us up and we'll be happy to address your concerns in future episodes. Thanks all.